Press record. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by Nick Sutherland from Myndfit. Nico, how are you, mate?
I am mentally very well. Actually, that's a lie. I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning, so I'm a little bit
Wow.
tired. My back's giving me a little bit of grief for some unknown reason, but that's okay. It's just is what it is. But I'm actually, I was cleaning up dog poo out the backyard this morning, and I realised I'm having mixed emotions about Anzac Day. So it's a bit
Ah,
because I've had to meet with the Defence Force Ombudsman this week about what happened 20 years ago. They're done this repatriation sort of program and basically saying sorry and this is what we're doing to make sure it never happens again, which was great. But then I was coming at it from, yeah, but what do we do with the people that have been through it already? So it raised a lot of that old stuff up. And then with, yeah, Anzac Day around the corner, it's always a mixed day for me. I mean, it's great because the Bombers are playing, but then it's yeah, it takes you back in that headspace. And remember when we interviewed Tristan on the podcast
mhm.
from Blind Tiger Yoga, and he was talking about the veteran suicide rate is highest the week before and the week after Anzac Day, and you miss a lot of buddies and that sort of thing. And yeah, veteran suicide rate, they've just called for a royal commission into it. So yeah, in that regard, uh, I'm well, but I'm just in an interesting headspace, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Makes sense. It's like, we think about, the holidays and Christmas and New Year's as a good time of year, but me working with a lot of addicts and everything over the years, it brings up a lot of that stuff because a lot of them had very dysfunctional families growing up. So it's just these certain times of the year that can bring up, the places where, we've had some pain in the past. So yeah, it makes sense, mate. Absolutely. And as long as your back's ready for our golf weekend next weekend, I'll
Yes,
be I'll be stoked. All right, we
the
have a
back, the
wonderful.
back.
We'll be back with a good back. Our guest
Yeah.
today is Sean Coffin from the Modern Bloke. Very, very excited to talk to him today and about the work that he's doing. Sounds like you're a Bombers supporter as well, Sean.
Yeah, so I was saying with Nick, with the mixed emotions for Anzac Day, my dad's a Collingwood supporter.
All
Uh,
right.
so the rule is a lot of banter until the game starts, and then one of us doesn't answer the call to the other one afterwards.
Have you been to many with him in person?
No, so my he lives in WA, and the two bucket list things are going to Anzac Day and going to a grand final. I haven't been to an Anzac Day match, so my fiance is an MCC member, which is one of the top, ticks of the
Yeah.
green flags for dating. So it's on the cards.
I had an MCC membership. My grandpa put me down the day I was born, but then when I joined the army and moved away and everything, I just let it lapse. And I got in touch with them when I came back, and they're like, "Yeah, no, it just pays for the last 10 years, and you can have your membership back." And I'm like, "Yeah, I might just let that slide."
No.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to go to the first Anzac Day game where it was
Ooh.
a draw, and I was sitting
The
right down
draw.
the front, and yeah, it was an amazing day. And I've been to a few, so yeah, maybe next year, mate, we'll get down there and cheer on the red and black.
Oh, always keen for that.
I just remember
Always.
I was at the one, and I hate both teams to be honest, but I was at the one where Zaharakis got
North Melbourne supporter.
yeah, let's not bring that up. So, the one where Zaharakis got that goal late and there was a big comeback, and I remember it was amazing. Just the noise in that
Ah,
place was unbelievable.
100,000 people just going off their heads. It's yeah,
I can't remember
amazing.
where I was when Princess Diana died, but I was at the Frankston RSL when Zaharakis with my dad was down at the time, and my step brother-in-law who's Essendon as well. So it was. I remember the RSL by the end of the game was split. Collingwood and it doesn't matter where your family loyalties or friendship loyalties, it was split. So
I love it,
I
mate.
like
I
oh,
love
you
it.
got your priorities sorted, Sean. Well done.
Yeah. So, Sean, tell us and the listeners a little bit about the Modern Bloke. Tell us what it's all about. What you're doing at the minute, and maybe what birthed it as well. What it came
Yeah,
out
the
of.
inception of it.
yeah, so the Modern Bloke is strategically designed to emulate that, like this podcast. These discussions is that what is the modern bloke and what is the evolution of kind of like from our generation growing up to the next? What do we want to be known for? and just simply showcasing what my thoughts, other people's thoughts are of what the modern bloke in today's society would be like. I found that these discussions that we're having are more common, but they're probably not promoted as much on any platforms, or they weren't maybe 2 years ago. Therefore, the people that are maybe interested in it, or this solves a problem for them, then they weren't being exposed to it, but they were still being exposed to probably the negative parts of blokes culture. So it was more just, kind of like a platform to try and change the perception of two blokes, what a modern bloke is, from probably the communication of looking at us three here. If we're saying that, this is what we are, this is how we do it individually, then we're going to have more impact on someone similar to us or younger or even older, that it's kind of like, oh shit, guys can actually do this. We can talk about the stresses that we go through with Anzac Day for, people that have served in the army, rather than, I know blokes don't talk about that, and the only people that tell us that are a 50-year-old female psychologist or a politician that we don't resonate with. So it kind of like just came out of that, that you can't be what you can't see. So let's promote blokes that are both enjoy football but are comfortable with talking about their emotions in a way that blokes talk to other blokes as well.
Why is that important to you?
I grew up with a single mum and an older sister, so I grew up in a very feminine household. And
Me
then,
too.
yeah, there you go. And then, and I was, to me, the conditioning of talking about and being in touch with your emotions was just normal to me. It wasn't until late, early teens, going into footy clubs, that I really then saw, okay, well, hang on, we've been told we're not allowed to do this, but I thought it was normal. And then, moving forward from that, I've gone through my own mental health issues through bullying, and probably being more empathetic or feeling the emotions, and being then in a culture where that, there's a lot more bullying, a lot more picking on, a lot more stuff like that. And you just told to suck it up. And I realized how much that had an issue, through being supported by my mother to be vocal, I guess, and be able to talk about what I want. I found that when I did, there was a lot of pushback from both different parts of society. But after a couple of months or years of stuff, I would get people reaching out to me and going, "Oh, mate, I know 2 years ago I was like, why do you always talk about your emotions? But I'm actually going through something. Do you mind if we have a chat?" And I love that, because I'm like, yep, cool. You're starting to realize. And then the pinnacle of probably the journey was in early university, when there was no men's officer, and I was running. I did the Van Wilder job. I was running all the parties and stuff, and but I was very open. And then I'd have a lot of guys come up to me and say, "I'm stressed about career. I'm stressed about relationships." But there was no specific. There was a women's officer, a queer officer, environment officer for the support which they needed, but there was just no men's officer, and it didn't resonate when I asked. And but guys don't have any problems, so we don't need them. And it just those social answers just confused me more than anything. And then same thing, being vocal, more and more people kind of responded to it. And then about 2 years ago, I was with my now fiance, and would talk about this to her, and she's very emotionally intelligent, empathetic, and the idea of being the brand, or the brand of the Modern Bloke, was we were talking about International Women's Day, and she said that and she's very good in business and very intelligent, and I said, it doesn't sit right that when there's International Women's Day, you see all these amazing events, but their partners aren't there. And I understand why that, the partners aren't there, because it's on there for women. But I'm like, if you were having an event, like, I'd love to be there clapping you. And how powerful would it be to show, guys supporting the women, so they don't feel like they're
solidarity.
Alone in that event. Yeah. So yeah, she encouraged me. She said, why don't you put all this stuff down on, you know, on a blog or an Instagram or podcast or something. And so yeah, I just started putting it out and seeing what resonated. And then yeah, and I think part of the brand, I call it, is that supporting of women. Sometimes if you're in that toxic culture, isn't what we do. And I just never understood why. So I think, you know, the more that we have Modern Blokes supporting it, then you change that and go, oh, maybe it is what we do.
We did a podcast. It was probably in the 20s or 30s, I think, Hass, and it was about the sensitive man and how to exist in the day and age. And just remember the snag, the sensitive new age guy.
Yeah.
I don't think that helped
No.
our cause. I really, you're such a snag. It seems like a derogatory remark where, and it was. I think there was a connotation there that blokes went from one extreme to the other, and they were a bit too sensitive. So I think what we're doing really well now is finding that middle ground, and we're staying in our masculine energy and our masculinity and our power, but doing it with a respect to women and their power and their energy and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's also interesting to, you know, when things come full circle, and I was reading something a while back, or it had some pictures of men in the 20s and 30s compared to men now, and they're all dapper and had their ties, and you know, chivalry was very big back then, and you know, it was a different age, a different time. And then there was, you know, photos of guys these days just dressed with their jocks hanging up near their nipples and just spitting on the street and just really trashy. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Sean, on where men are sort of heading in that direction?
Well, it's a great conversation because I specifically talk about the evolution or like evolving the brand of man or the culture of blokes versus changing. And I think when we talk changing, and you bring up the snag, is that you choose either one or the other. And it's kind of like, well, if I'm a snag, then it means that I can't like the masculine or the traditional stuff. And that's where I think then the conversation then becomes, okay, well then if you're denying your whole masculinity, then that means it must be bad. And then it diverts. Whereas you said the blend, I look at 80-20 rule in business, and you know, 80% masculine, 20% feminine. Like we should all have a balance and understand that. And when evolving culture, you talk about those pictures, and it's kind of, it's not about saying, well, let's go against something, but I do it. I've done it some talks with footy clubs, and we do the. I'm tipping it's okay to swear on the podcast.
Fucking oath.
We don't you fucking dare, you cunt.
It's when we bring in the three. It's an activity we do where you go with blokes culture. What would we bring in? What do we want to keep, and what do we want to fuck off?
Yep.
And it's having those discussions either here, or it's powerful in when you've just got, you know, 30 or 40 men, and you just go, right, let's not worry about what society's telling us or what we're being condescended to or whatever extent. Between all of us, how do we want to evolve? What's a bad thing in our culture that we like? What's something good outside of our culture that maybe we want to bring into? And one of them can be empathy. You know, women's cultures may be good at empathy, or inclusion comes up a lot, that maybe blokes as inclusive to other demographics is what we should be. What do we want to keep? Banter, you know, type thing is a good one. What do we want to fuck off? Maybe peer pressure type thing. And we can start saying, okay, why do we do it? Not because someone else is telling us to do it, but because we realize that that's a bad thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can I piss off something of mine that I just became aware of? Was it using the C-bomb in a derogatory way? Because it's part of the. It's a weird one. Using the word cunt as a swear word. It's just a, you know. I was listening to a comedian one day, and he goes, it's actually like a woman's vagina is like bulletproof. It's so much more powerful than a penis. Like you get touched on the balls, and a man will get crippled. Where a woman's vagina is, you know, has a baby coming out of it. And it's amazing. So why do we put people down using that word? And I just caught myself when I said it. I was like, how interesting. It was just old conditioning. So
it's a Betty White. That was, I think Betty White said that about testicles, why do we, grow some balls and don't be a pussy, when balls are very soft and very fragile, but pussies can take a pounding. And I'm like, good old Betty White.
She's a ripper. She's a ripper.
And it is, I think, and this is why I love that, like, the work that you guys do around, like, the inner works that you do, because of the difference between saying blokes from, say, external blokes culture, you can't say cunt. We only just knowing the emotional reaction of a normal person, or especially blokes culture, they're going to say it more. Like, it's type thing. It's don't call me that nickname. But if we sit here and go, do we want to do that? We're going to get a lot more buy-in to actually stop doing it. And to me, the same thing. Sometimes it's just thinking, is it lazy?
Well, it's the same. It's the same as saying, "Oh, you're so gay." It was big when I was in high school. It was just a flippant, but it's that casual sexism. It's that casual homophobia. It's that casual racism. It's all that casual stuff that there's no intent or meaning behind it, and a lot of people are getting caught out with it. But it's we do need to stop being lazy with our speech. I think
it is lazy. Just call ourselves out, like you just did.
Yeah,
yourself, Nick. You know, and I really like, Sean. I like that exercise of those 3 steps, because I think what's happened, we've had this traditional idea of the masculine, and then, like Nick said, it's just what we say. Well, this isn't working because this is very destructive. Men are killing themselves because they're not opening up and talking about stuff. This is not good over here. But then we decide we're going to throw all of that out and go completely to the other end. And I was reading some stats the last couple of decades. Testosterone levels in men has dropped dramatically. Something like 40% or something, the levels of testosterone just in the average population of men. So it's like a lot of people have swung completely the pendulum to the other side, and now a lot of men, I'm sure men listening to this, are still trying to work out, like, who am I meant to be as a man? Because I was told this is bad, now this over there doesn't feel right. Like, what traits, how do I blend this in together to find my my middle ground? And I think an exercise like that's really helpful.
I'm talking to my counsellor about this stuff, because Emma and I, my partner, I was raised by 2, and so I'm all about feelings, and she's not so much. So she's got probably more of a, I don't want to say a masculine energy, but she's a bit harder, and I'm probably a bit softer.
Stoic,
and
maybe.
Yeah, not stoic, just a bit of, I don't know. She's amazing, but it's we had to define our roles in this relationship, and coming from where I've come from in chivalry and all this sort of stuff, it's being really sensitive, but I was going too far past that spectrum, so I was too mindful of everything. I was too caring, too considerate, and then I'd find myself just sort of getting run over all the time and feeling disempowered and getting angry or agitated internally and frustrated. But that was on me. So finding that balance, and we talk about it in Buddhism all the time. It's the middle ground. Is so important, because when you're in that space, you can help each other out. Like, women aren't perfect. They do their things that aren't great in their culture, and men aren't perfect. We do things in our culture. So if we can start working together, I think it'll be a wonderful thing, because we can offer so much to each other.
I think working together is great, and what you both said is that and the snag conversation is when we push too far, telling people deny your masculinity and go down being a snag type thing, or that too far. If it's going against, it gets confusing, and you still have people acting out. You still have people going, okay, well, I'm being, say, emasculated, but that doesn't sit right with me, versus I'm naturally more empathetic. So I'm sitting where I am. You encourage them to go, you can be masculine. Let's talk about what that is, because if that's not, that's supporting being chivalrous and supporting your partner, which then hopefully gets them into where they're comfortable, and then they don't act out about that. You said with your empathy, and one quote that I like is, we're not asking for emotional men, we're just asking for more emotional men. So, and it's just that balance.
I heard a quote the other day. The cornerstone of love is understanding. So I think when we can understand ourselves, and then we're in a position to understand the other sex, then what comes from that is a deeper level of respect and a deeper level of acceptance and a deeper level of there's less agitation. It's less fire versus fire. It's less binary, less man versus woman. And it's sort of like humanity can start coming back to the forefront, which would be a beautiful thing instead of men's rights and women's rights and this and that. It's a me versus you. And women have been horribly oppressed for such a long time, and so they deserve all the recognition they're getting these days. But once again, the pendulum will go too far because they've been at that end of the spectrum. It'll go to that end, and hopefully, men in their sensitivity, but not sensitive in terms of ego and getting offended at everything. It's sensitivity to other people's needs, perhaps. So that emotional intelligence increasing and getting away from the alpha male or the snag and finding that. I heard about the omega male. And
Yeah.
he sounded great, and he sounded like this healthy middle ground. It's not the ego involved. It's just leading by example and working with people instead of, hey, look at me, I'm the best and I'm the strongest.
100%. I think that's that's a preach. Emotional intelligence is one of our major logos. And when dealing with guys, I'm going, that's the scenario. How do we get to what you just spoke about? And it is dealing with listening to them with empathy. Where I think where we can get stuck is with condensation. Like, as you said, the ego, the alpha male ego, and you kind of go, well, to break that down isn't condescension because of you putting a personality box. If you're then using shame, condescension, or attacking or disrespect, the alpha male with the ego is going to react defensively and going like, it just doesn't.
It's going to get triggered.
Yeah, it's going to get triggered, and you're not going to get anywhere. As if you actually go, okay, yes, you are. You're going to. We understand that. Let's work with that and break down those walls, and we get to the solution that we want.
I love that. Sean, with working with men, what have you seen, men maybe struggling with the most? Is it that initial vulnerability and them opening up, or what do you think?
I think the initial vulnerability is a big thing because, and this is where, what all we're doing is to show what that looks like. And part of this podcast and my podcast is what we're telling guys to open up, but we're not showing them how. So the initial vulnerability, and then we've got to understand that we're a very early stage in that culture where then, we're asking someone to go outside of their culture where 95% are going to try and bring them back and going, what are you opening up for? What I have found is that vulnerability though does breed vulnerability massively with the guys' culture. And
totally.
We are actually really good at it. Like we're actually really, really good. Once we open up,
but this is where, sorry to interrupt, but this is where I need to ask women a favor when we do try and open up, not to get run over, because women are so conditioned to men not opening up. As soon as we do, they're like, what the fuck? Anyway, and they dismiss it, or they run it over, or they turn around and make it about them, which then shuts us down again.
It's a question that I get. The two main ones is what have I found, and what can women, and then from women, what can we do to help? And that's where I think, what we're doing, and I say that with you, including you guys, is that we're talking to men about men with men's issues and men's responses, whereas traditionally sometimes it's, okay, well, this is how women would deal with it, so let's tell men to do that, and that's where there's the disconnect. And one of them especially, I had to learn I had to study communication. I studied articulation. I studied my grammar. I wasn't really great at it. Not always there, but at least I try to learn. And I think communication and emotional intelligence is something that we do need to study as guys and actively learn and go, right, we weren't supported with this. It's not we're failing at it or we're shit at it. We weren't supported growing up with this. So let's start rectifying that. If your man, there's a female listener out there, or even communicating to your partner, if you're a guy out here, to set that standard and go, I'm going to start trying, but it's probably going to be shit at the start.
Well, they don't even know what their emotion is. That's why, sometimes men want to open up, but they don't know what to say. I'm feeling, and then it's just a blank because they don't.
It's a different language. It's, you know,
Yeah,
They
huge.
don't recognize the emotion.
I studied German for like 4 years at high school, and I can say like three things. I can say like good morning and good day. That's about it. So it's like if you asked me to speak to someone in fluent German, I wouldn't have the capacity to be able to do that. So I just have to take baby steps at first and then start to learn and develop. But I'd need someone very reciprocal and empathetic
Yes.
and understanding on the other side to help me through that process. And this is where, you know, men and women can start to create a really beautiful relationship when they're both up for that challenge.
Also, what
And
Nick
then
said is that understanding, and I think with like what we say, what I say to women is, if they fuck it up, like, you know, work with them. Just know that if there's someone that you love, especially, they're doing it with good intention. And nothing can shut a guy down to just stop this cycle than if they say something with good intention but wrong, and then they get shut down of, you know, and if the communication between, say, partners is that toxic communication where one wants to just be right and it's just a punching match, and then the men's never going to win that one type of thing. And if he tries to open up and it's like, oh, but you said this last time or you did that, and just shut down, just goes, you know what, fuck it, I'll just go back to normal and not talking.
Another big thing though is that, and I don't know if it's something from the past or whatever, but men are supposed to be the rock in their relationship. You know, women are by nature more emotionally driven creatures, and men are meant to be the stoic, emotionless rocks. And now that we're starting to open up and express ourselves and say, oh, by the way, I'd like some help too. When we start asking for help, women are going to meltdown and going, but you can't ask for help because we're the one that doesn't need help, and you're the ones that are meant to give the help. So if you're not helping me, then, you know, so there's this disparity going on there as well.
Huge. That's why I advocate talking to counselors and to therapy, like to psychologists, because let's fight one thing at a time. And I'll talk to my partner. You know, you obviously talk to your partners about support and help, but one, they're not your rehab if you do have proper issues. But guys don't want to burden their partners or their family, and they don't want to burden their mates, and they don't want to be judged by their mates. So even if they want to, who do they go to? And that's where I just say, you know, go to your partner and talk about X, but there are some that you don't want to actually burden on her. So talk to a psychologist about that.
Well, you got to open up and talk about, you know, communicate about the relationship and stuff. But that still hasn't happened in the past. So when a man does
Yeah.
that nowadays, there's literally a sense of shock from the woman. But if you're not operating well, yeah, if your car's not operating well or functioning properly, you're not going to take it to a mate and say, "Can you fix my car?" You're going to take it to a professional.
Yeah. One tool that I use, this is through the communication learning, and especially at work, which can hopefully help listeners. If you're stuck on that, just that start of opening up you're talking about, Nick, is not you made me, you did this and made me feel. It's when you did this, as a result, I felt. And that was a game changer, because of, instead of placing blame where someone's get defensive, you can, it's, if you're, that's the only thing that you say to your partner is, when this happens, I feel, then that leaves them to go, okay, well, I either care and let me listen to him.
But that's you being responsible for your
Yes.
happiness instead of outsourcing it. And that's probably one of the biggest things with Myndfit is using that thing. So there's the stimulus, and then people say, oh, that made me feel, he made me feel shit or whatever. But no, your reaction to that stimulus is to create a chemical reaction and a feeling within you, because you've either been triggered and it's a nice, you know, endorphin release, or it's a terrible one. So yeah, that sense of ownership is so important. You go, right, you didn't make me feel this. I got triggered, or it resonated or something, but I'm creating this feeling within myself.
Because you can argue who's right or wrong all day. That's just two egos going.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with how someone feels, because that's their subjective experience. And me and Melissa do it all the time. It's like, well, this happened and I felt this way, and then one of us realizes, oh, I just completely misread the situation, and then it's okay and we hug. But like, if I just say, you know, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, it just never ends.
And I did that, and yeah, it's ego versus ego then.
And then you have the option of going, okay, well, if that's the case, say, like, you know, Melissa, with yourself, I've got Danielle, and you just go, okay, is that justified? So what I did to make, and you felt bad, should I have done that or should I have not? Now, or was I justified in doing? If she feels that she's justified in doing that, you go, cool. If that's going to trigger you, let's work on that, rather than me changing my behavior, because then it can be a controlling relationship. But I had one when we were early on. Look, with work, I'm a Frankston boy, and my partner's a Bo Morris girl. And I said to her early on, I'm like, look, to be honest, when you're going to business meetings and stuff, I do feel threatened by you being around such successful guys. And she's like, cool, but I'm not going to stop doing that because it's part of my job, but let's work on your trigger. I'm like, cool. Like, yeah, you pulled me up on it.
And that's it. And that's why, so what Nick said earlier, like we got to take complete ownership for our experience, because that's where people can, it starts off with things like that. But if you don't have the balls to go, yeah, I'll work on that, then that kind of gets smaller and smaller. Then it's like, well, you can't speak to them at work. Now you can't speak to friends that are guys. Now you can't look at other men in the street. And it just keeps getting smaller and smaller because that trigger is going to be active because it hasn't been worked on.
Huge.
As you said earlier, though, like you can't be what you can't see. And Hass and I talk about you can't hear what you don't feel. So, if we can't go internally and learn to go internally and check in with ourselves and where am I at and how am I feeling, and then be able to understand what that feeling is and what's causing it, and then communicate about it, like it is difficult. I mean, Hass and I keep ranting about this a lot. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. You got to do the work, and it's just what it boils down to.
I think, Nick, sorry, Sean, just something that you said earlier, Nick, was that how we're been seen as the rock, like the masculine kind of thing. And then when I start to express my emotions, then I'm not the rock. And I think that's just it's definitely happening, but it's a misconception, and I think that the wheel's turning and there's more and more people, and I think this is where it's going to go, is that when a man does open up, that's also seen as being the rock in that moment, because they're willing to actually speak about that, because so many men who've been the rock and not showing their emotions end up not being a rock because they end up drunks or leaving their family or that kind of thing. So the more and more that culture, and especially, the women, the partners of men, can see when a man opens up and go, fuck, he's been the rock in this way at this moment. That's going to be really powerful.
Well,
that's it.
In a heterosexual relationship, in a heterosexual relationship, both parties have got to go, right, whatever we've been doing, isn't working, so we need to create change. So have that awareness that it needs changing, acceptance, and coming at it with this motivation to change, not because we hate who we are or how we are, but because we love each other enough to evolve, that would, again, evolve into healthier versions of ourselves, and then the relationship will be healthier. But it's got to come from, change has to happen on both sides of
any relationship, though, because there's a balance of masculine and feminine in a heterosexual relationship, but there's also the balance of the masculine and feminine in any gender relationship.
With masculine, and I'll just touch on what you say, Ryan, with the rock scenario, and it's a great analogy because of I think what we were saying last, about previous miscommunications, is that opening up means that we're not the rock, we're we're feminine, and people. The majority of blokes that you have that there are issues with that want to be masculine. So anything that takes them away from that traditional or like negative masculine, even they pull away from. The communication is actually going deep within your feelings, sorting shit out is masculine. That's you being the rock of going, okay, there's something that's affecting this relationship or my family. As a bloke, I need to sort this shit out. I need to get this done, because if I deny it, then I'm cowarding away from it. I'm going, okay.
It's the easy way out.
It's an easy way out. I don't want to open up. I don't want to face my issues. So I'll drink them away or drugs them away or, just mind-numbing shit away them. I'm actually not stepping up. I'm not showing up and going, I'm going to sort this out.
It takes an inordinate amount of strength to be vulnerable, though. Coming back to that space, being vulnerable, and then it takes more strength to let go of what we're holding on to than to continue holding on to it. We're holding on to this resentment, or this anger, or this, I'm pissed off at her for doing that. It takes more strength to sit there and go, oh, I'm feeling this, and I need to just take a minute to get it out of my system. Otherwise, if it stays in my system, it's going to cause damage. So, this is me being a rock, opening up to you, and what I need from you right now. I always teach my clients this. It's in communication. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I need. Can you do that for me? So just those
Good one.
three little ticks. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I need right now. Can you do that for me? Because once again, we have to look at the other person's capacity, and we can't just go, right, I'm going to be a vulnerable, sensitive man and start trying to communicate. If my partner can't do it, then we're going to get pissed off at them if we've got this expectation. But they should say this to me, or they should say that, or they should sit there and listen with empathy as well. Like, so we have to check in on what their capacity is. So that's why the last one's really important.
Yeah, I like
That's
that.
not going to happen straight away. If you're in a relationship that's not, it's the expectation that let's keep working at this. Let's look at our trigger points. Because I can imagine, even if you're both trying, if that's not what you've done for the last couple of years, and it is a process that we need to learn. I mean, I love the courses that you guys do because I just think that just encouraging guys, the brand of guys, to go, cool, let's start learning about mental health. Let's start learning about emotions and triggers and relationships and communication. Like, we should be learning about that. It's life skills.
It is. And it's this awareness thing again. Like Nick, you said, the guy who says, well, I'm going to take a minute to get this out because I know if I don't, it's going to hurt me down the road. And that awareness is where so many guys, haven't been, or most guys, like you say, Nick, when you get people to put their hand up, men don't even know they have mental health. They're like, oh, what? Yeah. What is it? Yeah. I've heard about that, not me.
Like, I don't have depression. Human? Fuck that.
Yeah. I see a lot of people. Oh no, I don't have depression or anxiety. I'm like, cool, but you still have mental health. Like, you still need to deal with that. And I think,
but also those feelings of depression and anxiety. I had a client the other day ring me and say, I just got this wave of depression come over, and I said, oh, cool. Was it a healthy emotional response? He's like, what do you mean? It was depression. I'm like, so what? You've got an aversion to feeling normal human emotions, which are actually really important. Unpleasant emotions are equally as important as pleasant emotions in the right circumstance and to the right degree. And he's like, well, really? I said, yeah, you're allowed to feel sad. Yeah, if someone dies, it's healthy to feel sad. If something doesn't happen, you're going to get a little bit angry. Where it becomes unhealthy and where you start neglecting your own mental health is when you start compounding that by being unrealistic. He's like, oh, fuck me. Yeah, right.
I think it's what Ryan says, and that's vulnerability communication, when you just go to your partner or to yourself even, and just go, this situation sucks, like I'm really upset with this, like this is causing me stress, or this is causing me depression or anxiety or anger, and you just kind of go, well, should it? Yes, cool. Then that's the vulnerability of saying, I'm stressed. COVID, I'm actually stressed about how I'm going to provide for the family or stuff like that. That's being vulnerable to your partner, because then you can work on it, versus being a negative.
Well, it becomes a we rather than a me versus you. And I see this all the time with couples when the pressure's put on, as is going to with any relationship. Usually that pressure pushes people apart because they go into their egos and it becomes me versus you. And it's your fault that this is happening. They get attacking. Where two people in a relationship that are emotionally healthy and mature and intelligent, when the pressure is applied, they come together and they go, right, it's us versus the problem here, and how are we going to get through this? And it's a beautiful thing to watch.
It made me, what you said then, think about, the not opening up, the classic guy who has to provide for the family and he's feeling that pressure and never talks about it. And then he loses his office job, but he doesn't tell the wife and then keeps pretending to go to work. And he's all dressed up with his briefcase feeding the ducks at the pond.
Yeah.
All because there's so much pride and shame and everything kind of on him that he won't even admit it and just pretend to go to work.
No, and that's how they deal with it.
It's just embarrassment, but that's that unnecessary suffering. So that's where we need to validate what you're feeling. Okay, you're feeling that, but is it a healthy emotional response? Like Myndfit is all about teaching people how to have an emotional response that's in proportion to what they're experiencing. And that's it. If I come home and there's no milk and I'm really attached to this desired outcome of having a glass of milk, when I get home there's no milk and I erupt and I start throwing shit around the kitchen and throw the dog off the balcony and burn the house down, That's not really a healthy emotional response.
You must
Go to
really,
the professional.
you must really.
The depth of our suffering
Yeah.
has is attached to the depth of our attachment. So, yes, if I
It's
really love milk, I'm getting really angry.
you mentioned that, and it's like it's funny, but it's true. And that's I worked
What
at
the milk story?
yeah, I mean, look, I really love milk. If there's no chocolate, to me, but it's I worked at a service station, and I remember I got propositioned to fight twice over Christmas, and one was because
Frankston?
of, yeah, one because
Only
of
twice.
twice, yeah, different people as well. But
Only twice.
one was one was a guy that I'd served too quickly, and you could just tell that this was this disproportionate reaction. I'm like, oh mate. He goes, oh, what's the fucking rush? I'm like, no, like, I'm like, you know, here, let's get it done. Let's get you home for the holidays. Like, oh, but you're just trying to get rid of me, rah rah, mate. Do you want to fucking? If you weren't behind that, come. I'm like, whoa, okay, settle in. But I'm like, okay, but he's probably just coming home from work where his wife's asking, or the kids want the expensive toys. So he's busting his ass to get more money to provide for the family. But then at the same time, over that period, he's not spending time with the family because he's working too much. So he's getting, we need to go on holidays, so we need this amount of money. However, you're not spending enough time with us. The kids feel like that you're never around, and that's how it's going to come out because of and that's where I think with guys, it's if there's no milk, should I throw my dog off the balcony? Probably not. Maybe I should figure out what's going on here. And there's no shame
this is
in
where
that.
it comes back to. This is where it comes back to.
No dogs were harmed in the making of this podcast.
This is where it comes back to that emotional intelligence, and I talk to clients about there's 4 parts to EQ, and that's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And so, if we're not aware of our own stuff and our own triggers and where we are at, proprioception is an understanding of where the body is and the space it's in, and we need proprioception of the mind as well. Where is my mind right now? Where are my emotions? Where am I within myself? So when we're aware, then we can sort of start to let go of things and be more rational and start to self-regulate our emotions. And okay, I'm getting heightened, but yeah, it's only milk. Okay, it's only milk. All right, I can go and get some milk. We can start thinking our way through situations, and then we're actually in a space where we can be mindful of how others in our families are going or workplaces or whatever, and then we're in a position where we can give to them. So if we're in survival mode, we're just going to take. If we're standing on our own 2 feet, emotionally self-sufficient, then we're in a position where we can give. And just for me, I hope that's where blokes end up in the next decade is standing on their own 2 feet, emotionally in their power, in their strength, and just this ripple effect of respect and love and being rational and logical and not having all this unnecessary suffering just deteriorating their relationships and killing them from the inside.
I think a lot of
100%.
hop on that journey because it's a process. You love talking about mental reps, Nick. It's this process of like, okay, I'm going to start off in the morning and night. I'm going to check in with my emotions and my mental state, and I'm going to become aware of them. Because in the past, I just haven't been aware of them at all. And then gradually we do it more and more, and we're checking in throughout the day. And then you get to a point, where like all I'm doing is I'm aware of my thoughts and emotions pretty much, right? But early on, it's really hard because number one, we're not very good at it, and number two, we realize how emotionally reactive we are. And a lot of men start noticing their emotions and thoughts, and they realize how fucking reactive and emotional they are. And they go, no, I'm going to just focus away from that, So it's just stick with it, because you have to go through that uncomfortable period.
A simple little tool that I give clients is just to say, that's interesting. So you get home, there's no milk.
No judgment.
That's interesting. And instantly It
Stop
opens
with
your
the milk
mind.
analogy. I can't get it out of my head. I'm just picturing this whole scene. It's like a movie, and you get home from work and you pull the carton out of the fridge, and as you tip it, just one drop comes out, and as it hits the bottom of the cup, all the music stops, and you just start getting red in the face.
Steam comes
The
out
carton,
your
the
ears.
carton scrunches down type thing. Just, yeah.
Turns
It's
into the Hulk.
Yeah, it's a Hulk. It's just, yeah. And one of the things that we do through the Modern Bloke is just put in, okay, one, it's the reality. It's this discussion of going, the reality is we are in where we are with the emotional thingos, and then it's going, okay, what can you do? I know, going like just simple things of going for a walk. I've got a podcast that in 2 weeks coming up with Genoa from the Momentum Lifestyle about meditation, and it's not about being that kumbaya, but just that finding a special place. And I know going for a walk is massive for me. When I'm like, okay, I'm triggered, I'm frustrated, just go for a walk, deep breaths, and even talk myself through it in the walk and get back. Just those little things where you can go, right, let's figure out what it is, rather than, I think, unfortunately, too many guys do react and they don't understand why. And it's irrational, and that is devastating to themselves, others, and women.
And this
So we need to work at both ends of it, because it's great to understand when we're heightened and to go for a walk, but that's just sort of not putting a band-aid on, but that's the horse is already bolted. What we're trying to do is to teach people to tame the horse a little bit more and to not get into that position in the first place. But we are human. We are going to react. And we use the 80-20 rule as well. So ideally at the end of our program, 80% of the time we're mindfully choosing how we respond to a situation, and we're thinking our way through, and we call it taking the hard path. But we're still human. We still have egos. We can't rip our egos off and piss them off. So 20% of the time we are going to react, and that's where we do the mental reps, and pull ourselves back into that space between stimulus and response. All right, hang on. No, that's interesting. The reality is there's no milk. I have a car. I have money. I can go and get some. Problem solved. That's not a drama. And then we keep moving forward. So,
and no dogs get
Do you think
harmed.
there's the issue that what's why, like, so with my walk, I'm like, why, like, so why am I frustrated over milk? Is it because of milk, or is it because of I've snapped at milk because of my boss is stressing me out over this, or I'm unhappy with this, and that's where I kind
it
of
depends, because you can go into ruminating, and you can start, once again, if you already got that destructive thinking going on, and we call it spaghetti brain, if you're using all these cognitive distortions, then taking that walk can just deepen that emotion for you if you don't have the tools, because you can go, fucking kids are always drinking the milk and this is happening, that's happening, and you can really sort of come back even more disconnected. You may have calmed down emotionally, but you'll be more distant or disconnected. So
that's why it's important to speak to a professional as well, and look at it as like going to see a personal trainer, because guys have this thing, and where this is a very masculine trait as well. It's like, okay, there's a problem. What's the solution? Fix, fix, fix. So how do I get from point A to point B in the shortest route? So if I start becoming aware of my thoughts and emotions, and I realize I'm overreacting to the milk, and then I'm like, I need to work out a reason why. Why am I so fucking angry at the milk? And if I can't work that out as a guy, I get very frustrated. Yeah, I get very, very frustrated about my experience. So sometimes
there's a secondary reaction.
So then we can just sort of say, well, hang on, I'm going to go speak to someone. And if I see them once a week, once a fortnight, I haven't like ruminated on everything, but I've said, hey, there was these 5 instances that had a similar theme, and I kept sort of overreacting and going off the handle in those instances. And then someone who's looking at it objectively can say, hey, maybe it's something to do with A, B, or C, and you can start to actually find a solution and end that frustration.
100%. And going in with a mindset of that, dropping that, maybe that ego or that on a barrier where you're like, okay, cool, I'm trying something new, and I'm talking to a professional. We're going to talk about stuff, because I know in that agitated state, and we talk about relationships and communication, is giving guys space to think and talk and and process and stuff, and whether it's a cycle or something. But what ends up happening, and my relationship has this a lot, because of my partner wants to talk, or something's wrong, what's up? And if I'm in my processing space, I'm just going to get more agitated. If I'm not in the mindset of talking about it and I'm being forced to do it, versus then she, like, I'm like, look, if I'm not talking, then I'm processing it. And then it's like, I'll come up and sit down and be like, okay, so this is what's been going on. And she knows it could take a day or two, but I'm processing it and I've got it covered. Versus every time she asks,
you sound like perhaps you're different communicators. There's two types. There's like painters. There's painters and pointers. And so I'm a painter. I like to paint a picture with my words, and I can waffle on for hours about it. Where Emma's a pointer, and she's just like, just fucking give it to me straight, bang, bang, bang. All right, are we done? Good, let's keep moving. And I'm just like, no, but we haven't talked about it enough yet. So it's really important once again to understand our communication styles and which one are you. And if you're in a relationship where you're different, you got to find that middle ground. All right, I have to be a bit more pointed, and you have to be a bit more painted.
Which is what you described, Sean. Though you guys sound like you've got to work that out, and this takes working out over time. So then she'll actually feel safe that when you say, "I don't want to talk about it right now," that you will, whether that's in a few hours or a day or two. She can feel confident that you will because that's happened in the past.
And funnily enough, circling back then to the conversation we had, because I said that whilst I'm not processing it, when you ask me about it, which is legitimate, but that just frustrates me. I feel frustrated. Not
you're an internal processor. She's probably an external processor.
Plus, she's adding stimulus whilst you're still trying to process the existing stimulus. So it's an overwhelm.
And with that, when this happens, I said when you ask me, I feel agitated and it disrupts my thinking. Then that's when we went to that discussion and said, okay, well, the action of interrupting, is that something that you should keep doing because it's justified, or you can not do? And she was like, cool, I won't do it because I know that you'll talk about it, rather than her being like, if the bad communication of, but I just want to know. And you're like, yeah, cool. But I'm telling you that every time you do that, it just resets my process. So it's like, cool, well, then there's something that I don't have to do, knowing that it frustrates you while you're trying to process it. And then it means that instead of 3 days over that, a day and a half, I can go, cool, I'm ready to talk about. And I've processed, I think, not whether it's guys or girls, but I want to process it so that when I articulate it, it's more pointed, as you said, Nick. That's me. I'm like, she'll go straight into it and then paint the picture as she goes type of thing. Whereas I'll be like, cool, I've communicated to my head. I've almost, it's almost like I'm doing a speech and I've role played it in my head a couple of times. And I know that I'm going to articulate my emotions and feelings or the issue, or what's bothering me, accurate.
I think that the reason why a lot of women have gone to that go-to is because men haven't been stepping up and willing to be open and vulnerable. So they'll want to talk about it now because they realize if they don't talk about it, it'll never get spoken about. There won't be that few hours or a couple of days that the guy will just never open up about it, for 6 months later. Let's talk about that. No, I'm not ready.
Let's be careful about smacking blokes over the head by saying that they're not showing up.
Smack them over the head.
No, neck up, you parrot. Because once again, a lot of blokes want to, they just don't know how to. So we've got to look at men's capacities, and it's too easy a trap to fall into to say men haven't been doing this. It's right, men haven't, but you've got to look beyond what they're projecting, or in this case, not projecting, and come at it with a sense of understanding. And so many blokes want to talk, but they're prioritising their partner's emotions instead of their own, or they don't know what it is that they're feeling, and they don't know how to be vulnerable and go, I'm feeling something, I don't know what it is, what do we do with this? It's so I think we need to be a bit more gentle with blokes and go, all right, everyone's doing the best that they can. That's just genuinely, you're doing the best you can, but it's not enough. So it's not your fault that you're like this, but it is your responsibility to learn how to start articulating what it is that you're experiencing within yourself, so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think most guys do want to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's not only in the relationship in terms of a partner, it's a relationship with mates as well. So if a bloke does start trying to open up with a mate, no, shut up, you poof. No, bloody, just shut up and have your beer. Suppress it. We've got to start encouraging our mates to open up. But going, I'm also not your therapist. So I'm here to listen, but you don't want to talk to a mate and just ruminate as well. You don't want to go looking for sympathy. You don't want to have been suffering and go looking for people to come to your pity party and just enable you to stay in there as well. So just be really careful of when you're talking to a bloke going, right, mate, I generally just need to get this out of me. All right, I don't want you to do anything with it. I don't want you to sympathise or whatever. I just need to get this out of me. Okay, I'm going to go and talk to my counsellor next week or whatever, but just I got to get it out now.
And it's pointed when you talk about with mates, because it's something that we speak about, and especially like what the misconception is, like the snag and like, that opening up is then all of a sudden just guys being just all emotional, is when we say talk about your mates, and we need the communication of what that looks like. And it's not, people kind of get worried, or the feedback is that, okay, on a Saturday afternoon when we're around for beers, or Anzac Day footy, when we're going around to a barbecue to our mates, and then the bloke that's got an issue is just going to, half time just going to start crying and blurting all this stuff out. And that's a misconception. So same thing as what Ryan says, they just go, we don't want to do that. So we'll just, where it's going, the blokes that you're going to the barbecue with, just understand that you should be able to open up to them, but you might go, hey mate, Tuesday Arvo, can we catch up for a coffee?
Yep.
I've just, or, when it is, how's things going? Oh, work's stressing me out. Oh, everything all right? Actually, not really. Look, it's not devastating, but do you want to catch up for a coffee, or come around and, we can talk about it, but let's not worry about it at the moment.
Yep.
And then the other, by having that as a culture, which I think women do really well, is that, and I find it, even when I'd been asked, is how's things, or are you okay? Or, yes. Are you okay? Yes. Are you okay? Yes. And then all of a sudden it's, are you okay? No. I'm actually really, really down in the bottom. And it's, that's what we need to be more comfortable just talking about the small things before they turn big. So if it's, I'm having problem, how's the relationship? And you go, actually it's, we're having an issue about this and that, rather than like, yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, no, it's good. And then 6 months later, actually, we're getting divorced. And you're like, whoa, hang on. You're like, oh, no, it was okay. I didn't want to burden you with like just petty stuff.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, if you have the discussion, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, me and my partner, we had the same issue. And have you thought about doing this? Or have you gone to Myndfit and talked about relationships or communication or that? And they go, we can stop it getting disastrous, and that can be through mental health issues. It's happened where you don't see the signs of people that then suicide, and it's like, well, if we get in that habit of going, things are actually really shit. Okay, cool. What can I support you at this point so it doesn't get down to that point?
But it's also can be difficult until you learn how to do it. That if you go to the supermarket and the checkout, she goes, "Oh, how are you?" and you go, "Oh, I'm having an existential crisis right now." There's a time and a place. So there is.
I feel like some of the old ladies at the checkout at Woolies do that. They're chatting for about half an hour.
Yeah. How are you is more become just a greeting. It's similar to hello. They're not genuinely asking how are you. It's just a social
automatic.
Now.
Yeah.
Phrase. Yeah. So it's that okay. Ring your mate later and say, mate, I genuinely want to know, how are you?
Yeah.
It's not just a how are you, it's a genuinely how are you?
I get a mate who messages me and writes, how are you, ... like internally. And I'm like, well, that's a different question.
And we do it at Myndfit as well. Like we've got a pillow cushion. It's got a wheel of emotions on it. And when clients come in, I say, how are you? And if they say good, they have to do 10 push-ups on the spot, because I don't want to know that they're good. Good's not an emotion. I generally want to know how they're feeling. So we're training them to sit there and to sit at this wheel for as long as it takes, and to actually land on how am I feeling. And a lot of the time there'll be 2 or 3 emotions. So it's never just one emotion. It's always a combination of a mixed emotions. And they're fucking loving it, because they're going, oh my God, that's actually how I'm feeling. And when they can put a label on it themselves, or they can make sense of it, is probably more the correct description. then they can go, oh, I'm feeling this, and that makes sense because this happened earlier, and right. So instead of good, it's just okay. Well, in the right time, in the right place, check in and learn how you are actually
The
feeling.
right time and the right place is important, and that's where, like, you just remind me. I've got a mate that we catch up with outside of like the group for lunch, and he's very supportive of what we do with the Modern Bloke, and we hug every time we meet. We're just like, just give each other a quick hug, but then we go,
so do we.
Good. But then we go, all right, before we start, is there anything wrong? Is there an issue? Is it how, like, the first thing we kind of bring up is just to say, right, if there is something that you're struggling with, let's talk about it now, rather than getting into chit chat and banter and just mucking around and then thinking, okay, this is a good conversation, I don't want to bring it up now. So we give each other the opportunity to go, I'm struggling with this, or there's an issue, I want to talk about this, and then we go bang. Now, 8 times out of 10, it's like, no, everything's actually really good. Now let's just talk about normal, but at least it opens up at that situation, whereas we wouldn't talk about it when we all catch up for drinks.
It's also knowing who in your friendship group are the go-to blokes to do that with. So my mates know that I'm not a bloke you come to just to get sympathy off. If you want to whinge about your missus and not do anything about it, I'm not that guy, because I don't want to enable a pity party. So, I've got mates that we just catch up. I've got mates I talk to on that level with. So it's really knowing the dynamic of your relationship within those social groups as well, and not expecting Steve, who's not a emotionally intelligent person, but he's a great mate and a fun golfer. Don't expect him to be that voice or to be that ear to listen to you.
Love it, mate. Sean, we will be respectful of your time. We're coming up on an hour now, mate. Where can the listeners get in touch with your work? Where's the best place to check it out? The Modern Bloke.
Yeah, perfect. At the Modern Bloke on Instagram, and themodernbloke.com.au. Just search that, or go on that on the internet. And we've got a podcast that's up as well. So Apple, Spotify. You can.
What's the podcast called?
Bloke.
Called The Modern Bloke?
Yeah, it's just the Modern Bloke podcast. It took me a while to figure that out. Sitting around.
No, I'm just picturing
brainstorming.
Sat on top of a mountain for a week just to come up with that one.
I was thinking more like it's always sunny Philadelphia guy. Like, oh my god, like I've got it. Or coming back after the week and going, all right, I've got it. I'm going to call it the Modern Bloke podcast. But yeah, so that's it's two episodes in, and same thing. It's just going to be chats like this, but teaching guys how to do it, and then Instagram and I guess with anyone, if there's any value they get from any of the quotes or anything that's on there, the easiest thing or thing that I ask people to do is share it, whether it's in stories or on your page, and tag me in it, because I come from a marketing background, and if we want to change a culture, if you've got a guy that follow or a mate that you might be trying to get through, the easiest thing is to put on a story where they can just see it and just be welcome to look at it. That's what I've just found is the easiest way to get through and help people.
Love it. Share the love, everyone.
Can I just finish on one thing? When you first asked how am I at the start of the episode, I started going down that path, and I pulled myself back and I went, no, this is actually how I'm really feeling. So I rerouted myself, and it was okay. I didn't get hurt. Like I didn't get stabbed with a trident. There wasn't a meteor didn't strike planet Earth. It wasn't. There was no pain involved in being vulnerable and just sharing openly with two blokes and a couple of billion listeners, hopefully. How I'm feeling, because someone may be sitting there going, "Oh, fuck, I'm feeling the same," and so then it creates this: we're not alone. And
it's liberating. It's liberating.
Well, it's a sense of connection as well. It's all right. This is a sense of an authenticity about it. So this fake, I'm okay. Put the facade up. I'm going to bring.
I learned about you, and I didn't judge.
Oh, thank you. Go back to Frankston with you.
And then found out you're an Essendon supporter, so I was like, "Oh, this guy."
Hey, this time next year, mate, we'll be getting tickets and going to the G.
Oof, looking forward to that.
Yeah, maybe we'll be speaking to the Essendon group before they walk out there.
Or giving
I
a
mean,
motivational speech with your glass of milk, and you're like banging it as you're talking.
go out and fight, and go out and play your hardest out, and just, when you're tackling someone, just imagine that you've just lost your last drop of milk, and internalize that.
I love it. Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Sean.
For tuning in. We'll see you all next week. Peace
Cheers,
out.
guys. Thank you.
Peace out.